Hello again, hello. A little Neil Diamond for you. Hey there, Out Louders. I guess that's what I come up with right now until I come up with something better. But I'm sitting here in my room in Austin, Texas, and it is June the 8th, 2025, when I am recording this episode. And I'm sharing that with you because it comes into play as this is a very important day in our family. I wanted to start by first saying, though, I'd like to dedicate this episode to Samuel Joseph Guido. And you will hear who this man is and how he is important in our life and our story. Um, and I just wanted to send out a lot of love and prayers to his family this week. So we are coming off, like I said, a big weekend. Before I get started, though, I want to tell y'all I've started a Facebook group called, shockingly, Pammy Out Loud. And it is a place for us to have a landing pad slash opportunity to connect with each other and share the stories and the insights that we're having with each other, ask questions. I'm going to throw some promo out there and material for y'all to mull over, get your feedback on. I hope you will engage. It is a public Facebook group, so just search for Pammy Out Loud. I will continue to announce episodes on my personal Facebook feed, but I wanted to have a place that would be more content, more opportunities for us to connect because it's all about connections. Anyway, this weekend we drove down to Houston to celebrate we're going to have another grandbaby coming up in August, and it's our youngest son Daniel and his wife Beth. And my oldest son and his wife Austin and Kenzie hosted a baby shower for Daniel and Beth, and it had many of their friends. I like to share this because Daniel's friends in particular have been such a gift to Brian and me, my husband Brian and me. You know, your children's friends are snapshots into who they are. And not only is it very comforting to see the kind of the caliber and the quality of the friendships that they have, but also it says something about who your own child is when you get to see the people that they attract into their life and the people that surround them with love and support and compassion and friendship. And that is so true of Daniel and Beth. So, anyway, as we talk about community and connections, one of the things that comes to my mind a lot is we take things for granted about where do connections come from. We take for granted our communities. A lot of times we don't even really think about the community that gives growth to these connections. They happen literally very organically, right? It is the community that you live in, the school that you went to, your church affiliation, your coworkers. Many times as young parents, it is the parents of your children's friends, their teammates, those people that you interact with, the PTA moms. These are the ones that become your basis of your community. And none of them probably are more important than the ones that you forge when you are a new adult. So I often say this that your friendships that you get when you are either high school and then particularly so when you go out to college in those early years of your young adulthood is some of the most bonding times that you have. You go through some pretty exciting explorations of yourself. You're on your own, you're launching as an adult, and you also have some missteps without your parents around to see you and catch you. And so you become very dependent on your friends, and your friends can be a super source of connection there that not only happens when you're in college, but then also that continue to support you your whole life. I've said this about my own husband, Brian. He has a circle of friends that he has had since many of them, they were in high school together, Valley High School, West Des Moines, Iowa, class of 1977. And there was many of these guys that forged friendships back then, went on to the University of Iowa together, and continue to this day to be connected. He considers those men in his life brothers from another mother, as they say, and they have become lifelong people that have been woven throughout the fabric of our lives long before there was Facebook and ways of staying connected like we do now. I see this also often from my son Daniel, and his group of friends have been such a joy to me. We have gotten to be a part of many of their lives and they've included us in their weddings and other life activities that have happened for them. And it's been such a great uh, insight into who they are as they let us just kind of peer into the window, not just peer into the window, but really invite us to sit on the couch with them and talk with them. And we get to see who these young adults are. And when you know what, when people talk about that they're so worried about the millennials or the 20 somethings or 30 somethings that they don't have, I listen, that is not a problem. I see some of the most outstanding character and quality of people in these young men and women that I have gotten to know through my son Daniel and his wife Beth. Anyway, I wanted to talk specifically though. We were headed to Houston to go to this baby shower that was this past weekend. And the Monday before, the last Monday, uh, one of Daniel's very dear friends, Guido, um, lost his father unexpectedly at the age of 69. And it was, of course, a very big shock and trauma. And we have been thinking a lot about his family and the connections that we have with our friends and family through our children. It's interesting. I said his name's Guido. His name's actually Andrew Guido. But if you're a boy mom, you often don't even really know what the first names of the boys are because they're never referred to by their first names. There's always silly nicknames and last names. And there was a long time that a Guido came around our house, and I did not know his name was Andrew. That was something I had to ask Daniel at one point that I'm like, what is Guido's real name? And he's like, oh, Mom, Guido's his last name. Andrew is his first name. And I thought back, I don't know, do y'all remember on Happy Days? Remember Marion Cunningham? She never called Fonzie Fonzie. He was always Arthur. Arthur. And I was thinking about that with Guido. But Guido has been my son's very good friend since college days at Texas Tech. Guns up, Red Raiders. And he and Daniel have been fraternity brothers, and I think they lived together. I'm never sure who all lived with Daniel because there seemed to be quite a cattle calling of people going through houses and different things. So I'm not sure exactly who was roommates and when, but Guido and Daniel have been friends for a long time, and Guido and his wife Mercedes live really close to Daniel and Beth. But anyway, when we got the news that Guido's dad had passed away, um, there was conversations about how can we get there as soon as we can and to be there for the funeral, which was last Friday. So my husband Brian and I decided that we wanted to drive down for the funeral on our way to Houston, and Daniel and Beth were driving up from Houston to San Antonio where the funeral was. And we got to the funeral, and it had already started when we got there. And let me just tell you, we weren't going to get in had we gotten there 30 minutes earlier. This place was packed with family and friends and community members that clearly wanted to honor this man and to lift up his family in their very big time of need. But as we stood outside on the porch of the church, as the ceremony was going on, as the funeral was taking place, several of Daniel's college buddies were standing there with us. And I looked around at these faces of these young men who I have watched go from college football games to tuxedos on their wedding days, and now they stood there in their dark suits, honoring their friend's father. I was just so overcome with emotion and love and um, pride at what caliber of friends these young men have in each other. You know, it's something that is, you cannot underestimate how important it is to show up for people. I'm reminded there is a fabulous essay that I heard probably, I don't know, 20 years ago. I think it came out. It was on the NPR show This I Believe. And I'll put a link in the show notes so that you can read it or hear it directly from the writer itself. But This I Believe is a podcast, and it was a show on NPR. I don't know if it's even still around, but what they do is people would write essays about kind of some philosophy on life. And this one, I believe the author's name was Deidre Sullivan. And she wrote an essay in 2005 called Always Go to the Funeral. Always Go to the Funeral. That really touched me, and it was a life lesson about the importance of showing up for people in their time of need. And it was something after, I cannot do it justice. I won't even try to, but I want you to read it for yourself. So be sure and go to the show notes and take it out. But one of the things that she talked about is it always go to the funeral doesn't just mean the funeral. It means you show up for people in all sorts of ways. The underattended birthday parties, the opening of their store or their show or their podcast, that you listen, that you pay attention, that you show up for them, and that in those ways, that is the underlying message of always go to the funeral. That you think that it doesn't matter. And I can remember myself, even when I was younger, thinking about, oh, when a funeral would come and you think, oh, I didn't really know the person that died that well, and I don't want to impose. And the whole premise of the always go to the funeral essay is just basically, you're not going for the person that died. You're going for the people that are sitting there that are very much alive, right? You're there for them. And it is your presence that bears witness to the importance that they hold in your life, right? And that um, what it says that you feel loved and supported in those moments, right? So, anyway, this is something, after I read this essay, it's something that I had shared with my boys at different points when they were growing up after I had read it, because it was just so powerful to me, this whole concept about always going to the funeral, and how I had always kind of said, "Oh, it just doesn't really matter," right? And I do that with other things. Like, it doesn't really matter if I don't go to the wedding. It doesn't really matter. I got invited to the party, but they're not even going to notice if I don't show up. Yeah, yeah, they do. They do notice when you don't show up. They do notice when you don't RSVP. They do notice when you're sitting on the front row of the recital. It matters. It matters to people. And so I as I sit there and talk about this, later I just want to tell you, we went on to, after the funeral, we went on to, and let me just say this. Andrew stood up and gave the eulogy at his dad's funeral. And I just want Sam to know what an outstanding young man you have raised as a son, and that he is supported and lifted up by a solid group of friends that love him and care about him and will be there for him as he has been there for them. I think when I go into Houston and I get to be around their friends, they're not just the, hey, let's hang out and party together. They're the ones that, hey, let me help you move kind of friends. They're the, when it's done, when the evening's over, they're picking up the trash and taking it out to the garbage. They're the ones that when we got home from the baby shower were helping unload the car at midnight into Daniel and Beth's house. These are the kind of people that are there for him, and these are the kind of people that are there not just for my son, but each of those young adults. They're there and they are holding each other up, both in celebration and in times of sadness, that they got each other. And it makes me, as a mom, feel so, I don't want to overstate this, but blessed and encouraged about the support systems that my children have around them and the kind of people that have surrounded them in their lives. You know, we were driving home. So we go to the baby shower last night. The baby shower was, yeah, last night. And we went after the funeral, we drove on into Houston. And then the baby shower was at my son and daughter-in-law's house. And then on the way home in the car, we were talking about their friends. And Daniel and Beth were in the back seat as I was driving. And Daniel said to me, he said, Mom, I remember that you told me about always going to the funeral, but I didn't really think much about it. He said, except for when Uncle Gary died. And Uncle Gary was my sister's husband passed away in December of 2015. And when he died, my son Daniel was 21 probably at the time, given his age now. I'm guessing that's about right. Anyway, he said, I'll never forget noticing that two of your friends, our good friends from Austin, drove out to Horseshoe Bay where the service was, and they were sitting there in the pew. And he said, and I remember thinking at the time, well, they didn't even know who he was. Like, I mean, they barely knew Uncle Gary, and they didn't know Aunt Sandy. That's what he was saying to me, right? And he said, because I remember asking you at the time, you know, why were they there? And I said, they're there not for Uncle Gary, but for Sandra to feel the love and support, and for your dad and me to feel the love and support of our friends. And Daniel said, I'll never forget that lesson. So I want to encourage each of you to always go to the funeral, to show up with, and whatever that means for you, not just the funeral, but all of those other things along the way, those invitations that you get that you think it just doesn't really matter if I'm there or not. Yeah, yeah, it does. So I want to tell you, Sam Guido, your son Andrew's going to be all right. And he's going to take good care of your wife because I watched him do it that day. All right. As I wrap this one up, I just wanted to let y'all know one other thing. It is Daniel's, as I said today, I'm recording on June the 8th, which is Daniel's 31st birthday. And guess what? Those same friends that helped us unload the car stayed and talked until well after midnight so that we could celebrate Daniel's birthday and sing happy birthday on the official day, June 8th. So we said happy birthday, Daniel, and we did that, and then called it a night. And then I just want to also say, besides their welcoming their new baby, which will be coming in August to a delivery room near us, we were also celebrating Brian and I were celebrating our 38th wedding anniversary and the 40th anniversary of our first date. Uh, and we like to say we got married on June the 6th, which was our own D Day, our own personal D Day, right? So, anyway, I wrote something on Facebook. I wanted to share it with you because I've often thought about this. We joke that we married on D Day, and I think that it's a analogous. The military operation is very analogous to weddings and marriages, right? So this is what I wrote. June 6th, our very own D-Day. And 38 years later, I'm thinking how marriage and military operations have similarities. You make alliances, negotiate agreements, celebrate victories, share the losses, strategize, improvise, mobilize. Sometimes there are disputes over insignificant territory, and others when you ask yourself, is this the hill I want to die on? You shore each other up and you nurse each other back to health. And always, always, hopefully anyway, keep those troops moving forward with a loving heart. I am honored to be by your side as I was 38 years ago. I love you, Brian Walsh. Happy anniversary. Mwah, mwah. And remember, celebrate your life out loud because gritting your teeth gives you TMJ.